I head up a immersive production studio, and we specialise in making immersive content for science centres, museums and planetariums. So we make films, we communicate and visualise complicated scientific topics and try and make them accessible to the general public. So as a child, I was always fascinated by the future and kind of technology. And so I think one of the most futuristic things at the time, and I think still now, was space. And so I was inspired by things like Star Wars, obviously. I used to watch that on repeat as a 5-year-old, but it was always the technology and what that enabled us to do. And then that led on to an interest in computing. And so I think this combination of kind of futurism, space and technology and computers, that was kind of what really inspired me as a child to ultimately end up where I am today. So when I was at school, everyone has those kind of awkward meetings with a careers guidance person, and they were telling me things like product design or graphic designer or illustrator, but I knew that wasn't really what I wanted to do. These were all things that I was doing and had an interest in, but it wasn't my dream job. And so it wasn't until I got to doing my A-levels, where starting to look at university courses and things like that, where I came across this one poster for the National Centre for Computer Animation at Bournemouth University. And then I kind of realised, actually, there is a specific path that I could take. And then actually going to art college to kind of further my skills more and take some of those technical underpinnings I had from the A-level and bring in the creative side as well. And so doing that art foundation course was really instrumental in getting me ready to then go to university to do a specific course that will enable me to work on some of those kind of feature films in Hollywood. And up until that point, I hadn't quite been able to kind of put my finger on what that was going to be. One of those early inspirations was Luxo Junior, very early animation from the studio that became Pixar. And this kind of showed what was possible with computer technology at the time to create this thing that looked quite realistic, but really had this kind of emotion and character imbued into it. And I think that was one of those early inspirations that I thought, maybe this is something I could aspire to do and take my interests in computing, but also kind of art and design and creative storytelling and bring those together. So my early career aspirations were to be a visual effects artist and kind of work on big Hollywood films, doing the visual effects for things like Star Wars. And so when I graduated university, I was fortunate to get a job in London. I worked on one of the early Harry Potter films, and that was a great experience to see what these kind of big visual effects studios, how they work, how there's hundreds of people all working towards these kind of amazing spectacles of entertainment. And then from that, an opportunity came up at the National Space Centre in Leicester, and this was to produce planetarium films. And at that point in my life, I'd never actually been in a planetarium. I didn't really know what one was. There weren't many in the UK at the time. And so I went for this job interview for a junior CG artist, went into this amazing environment, this immersive planetarium, and I just thought, wow, this is something unique. There's an opportunity here to really be part of a team that is pushing the boundaries, that's really innovating in terms of the technical and the creative storytelling. And it was just the perfect career opportunity for me. And so rather than just be a cog in the big machine of these massive productions, I could be involved in lots of different areas of the process. And I think I've always described myself as a jack of all trades, a master of none. And I think being that generalist in that small studio setting is really important, where everyone can kind of take on the roles that they need to. So yeah, that's kind of where the love of space, the future, the technology, the computer animation all kind of came together, and that's where my career started at the National Space Centre. Space has always been really interesting to me because I think it's an amazing way to connect with an audience. We get to ask questions like, what is our place in the universe? Are we alone? These are amazing big things to think about. And so to be able to make content about this subject, it's an amazing opportunity as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, and it really helps to make those human connections, even though it can be very abstract and very vast and untangible. It's our job to try and bring it down to earth and kind of really connect with that audience so they can see their role and help to appreciate their place in the universe. And that's an amazing kind of privilege to be able to work on those projects that go all over the world and have been seen by millions of people, inspire school children and families. So I trained as a computer animator to begin with, and so I think it's getting less technical these days as the tools are getting more sophisticated, but it is important to have that kind of grounding in kind of the maths and the physics. It is useful. But I think the most important thing is being able to critique your own work, to know when something is good or bad, know why it is, and be able to fix it. I think that's where the best artists kind of work. You're often in a team setting, but there are always those moments where you need to be able to reflect and make a decision that is going to push something to the next level. I trained as a computer animator and did that for a number of years, but then I progressed on to more of a producer role. So in that role, it's my responsibility to kind of try and keep everyone together, keep the team on track, keep everything on schedule and budget, but also make sure that the vision, the creative take-home messages are still being met and those criteria. So I find myself juggling quite a lot of projects. Because I'm not so much involved in one project intensely, I oversee a number of projects. So a typical day for me might be going into a morning stand-up where the team get together, just quickly update everyone on what they're doing so we know where any blockers are so we can be as effective as possible to start the day. And then I might go into a development meeting on a new planetarium show, so we might be kind of brainstorming how to interpret a brief and bring it to life, what's those key thematic concepts. And then I might go into a VR review where we're designing a new immersive exhibition and we prototype all of that digitally and virtually in virtual reality headsets. So I'll be with my colleagues in this virtual space trying to decide if something is looking right or it's kind of the right height, or if I can see the content correctly and if it's as immersive or as emotive as we want it to be. So it's very diverse, lots of different things going on, but it's quite exciting, quite challenging, and it kind of keeps me on my toes. Space is just cool. It's this amazing kind of area of exploration, and to be part of that space industry, whether that's as a scientist or an engineer, but all these other things, so the things that we do in terms of science visualization and communication, I just find it incredibly exciting that there's just so many things that we don't know yet. We just want to explore and we just want to see what's over the next horizon.